Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Monday, the 24th of April. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barrie. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good, Derek. Yeah, having watched the game back this morning, it was no better the second time. But lots to talk about from the game, and I think some new things, but also kind of familiar feelings for a number of players. So yeah, lots to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we just started there. Ian Muir gets in touch. Good day from Sydney. My missus is wanting dinner, so please start soon. So no problem at all. What you have, and let us know in the comments. I am intrigued. But let's talk Rangers. Before we do that, folks, you know the drill by now. A quick word for our podcast sponsor, Seneca Hair Restoration, the #1 hair transplant group in Europe. If you're looking to restore some lost self-confidence, and these are the guys to go to, and all the all-important links are in the description box. Also, if you want to take advantage of the website just now, 50 pence for 2 months worth of content, and not only that, you can enter into a draw for a tour of Ibrox with a club legend for 4 at the beginning of May. It really is a cracking offer. It ends later on this week. So now is the time to sign up to that. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe. Right, Joshua, I was on the post-match reaction video with Johnny last night after Rangers were humbled 2-0 by Aberdeen at Pittodrie. It was a really poor afternoon for Michael Beale's men. He said afterwards, actually, he was pinpointing the reason why they emerged with 0 points. And what he said was, we started the game quite well. Big chances, a fantastic clearance from Alfredo off the line early in the game, and then a really good team move. And we see Fashion Sakala go through one-on-one with the goalie. Bona hits the post, and Nico gets in and shoots when maybe he should give the ball to Malik for a simple tap-in. You go in at halftime being dominant. Aberdeen were struggling to get a foothold in the game. You know what the second half can bring. The first goal is obviously a bit of a freak goal, and then I didn't really like our reaction for 10 or 15 minutes. I thought we reacted poorly. I thought 1 or 2 started taking extra touches. I thought Aberdeen pressed down well on us. Obviously, kept playing forward and pressing and played pressure football. We have to stay in the game at that moment. We have to defend that far post better. And the build-up, there might have been a foul, but we have to go on and play and do our jobs better, because after that, there'll be chances, and there was. We had another big chance with Rabi. We have a huge chance with James as well. We come as an away team today and have 6 massive opportunities, and we take none. We have to take our medicine and go down the road and push it to one side to focus on next week. It was another day of missed opportunities, Joshua.
Yeah, just looking at the comments there, Derek, and I think you see from the reaction, obviously there's a couple of things going on. It is a familiar feeling to be talking about disappointment with this Rangers team, and I think that's the backdrop, that regardless of why the game was lost and how the game was lost, it's obviously important to remember that people are, I think, fed up of feeling let down by a team, and that is definitely why obviously there's such a reaction to the game. Why the game was lost, it's hard watching the game back, Derek, to not look at the first half and say that Rangers should not have had 2-3 goals. They'd averaged 2.7 goals away from home under Beale before yesterday's game. Yesterday was, I think, another demonstration of a team that really doesn't have a difference maker. We've heard about Beale speaking about both boxes a lot. And I think that Rangers don't have a difference maker in goals who can bail them out of certain periods of games. Not that yesterday was necessarily Al McGregor's fault, but I think similar to the old firm, you see that you don't have maybe a keeper who can make the difference anymore. And then similarly up front, you don't have that ruthless edge. It sounds a little bit cliche, but when you think of the number of opportunities yesterday, it's pertinent, because Aberdeen's first goal, obviously, their second goal is a poor goal, and it's a preventable goal. And from there on, the game suits them. They can turn it into more of a battle. But the first goal, obviously, is a bit of a freak goal. Their approach, and we're going to have a piece looking at this in more detail, Derek, they pressed Rangers effectively man for man. Normally what happens when Rangers drop a player into the back is they have an extra player, they have a bit more control. Rangers didn't have that yesterday, but simultaneously that gives them a bit more room up the pitch to try and work with. And I think the key difference between yesterday and other away games away from home, whether that be Hibs, Hearts, Motherwell, was that Rangers weren't clinical at all in the final thirds. And while that is all true, Derek, you have to look ahead to next weekend, and you have to look at how demoralising a game like yesterday is, and obviously understand the reaction to it, because, as we said at the top of the show, people are too used to being let down by this team. And although Rangers have been pretty strong away from home under Michael Beale, yesterday will be a really sore one for a lot of people, understandably.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in just describing that second half as being really poor. Can't disagree with much of the comments coming in. Let's get to a few of them. Xander Staff says that we're a far worse team without goals in our points per game. With and without him is staggering. I've seen a stat last night. I think points per game with Goldson in the team 2.7 and without him 1.7. I'll do a bit of digging today and see dig into the detail with regards to that, but there's no doubt the back line looks shaky, Joshua. That another 2 goals lost yesterday, and by all accounts, and we know it's a freak goal, the first one. Second one is poor defensively to lose. And Ben Davies looked a bit shaky on his feet. It looks like a player that is struggling for confidence a little bit. MMA King says, Ben Davies, I'm starting to ask questions. I think if Goldson is anywhere near fit next week, then the manager has a decision to make. Now, John Souttar, for me, did reasonably well. I thought he was okay yesterday. If it was a toss-up between the two, I'd be selecting John Souttar and starting him on the left-hand side. Ben Davies, of course, is naturally left-footed. However, I think there are legitimate concerns that he is not in a good spell of form at the moment. What's your thinking behind that in terms of the backline? Tell you what, as well, Borna Barisic was poor yesterday as well.
Think,
fans are playing Red fan. When will we see this guy again? An unused sub at the weekend. Does he get thrown in to that semi-final on Sunday? But the backline is a concern, Joshua.
This is why it's, I think, difficult to judge, Derek, or difficult to just attribute blame to one person, because again, you look at the fact yesterday. I think Barisic should do better for the goal, absolutely, and we've seen that at the back post so many times. And this conversation came up more so over the last couple of weeks with the sporting director, and the fact that Rangers have had 3 managers in the last 18, 19, 20 months, and I've had one sporting director over that period of time. And if you look at the kind of continuity between squads, the amount that was spent on a left back that's still not playing in end of almost approaching May, that has to the blame has to lie somewhere for that. It can't lie with Beale, because he came into the club in November. But this is why I think there is so much frustration, because there's frustration at so many such a variety of things. Definitely, you see this season, if it shows anything, it shows how important Connor Goldson is to Rangers. I think even before his injury at the start of the season, there was still an element of criticism that he faced, but definitely his 2 spells out of the team have showed that, I guess, just how important he is to that Rangers backline. 7 goals they've conceded in the last 3 games, and the first one, it is a freak goal. The second one, I think, very preventable. But for me, if you look at the position of Majowski, he gets behind Davies, but I think most people would say that you'd expect your left back to tuck in there and be the one that wins the ball. But this is a difficulty when analysing a game like this, because how different is it to other games that Rangers have played away from home? Take the Hibs game, where Rangers concede an early goal and Hibs are right up for it, but they go up the other end, and their composure in attack allows them to get away back into the game. I think the reason that before yesterday Rangers' approach under Beale has worked well away from home is because they leave attackers high up the pitch, and effectively when teams commit more men to them, as Aberdeen did yesterday, Rangers have more space to attack them in their attack in response. But yesterday there was just no final third quality at all. You think of the Raskin chance, the first one where Tillman plays that ball into Sakala. There's another chance that Tillman plays the ball into Sakala, and he should play the ball into Morelos. You've obviously got Morelos' shot is cleared off the line. So in terms of the what let Rangers down yesterday, I don't think anyone would have denied that wasn't there. I think Davies has struggled without Goldson, absolutely. I don't think there's much denying that. But what did lose Rangers the game yesterday? I think it was first and foremost their inability to be ruthless, and then obviously that second goal, which comes off the back of them, as Beale said, not reacting well to the concession of the first goal. So of course, failings at either end. But I think when you go away from home and you have the number of opportunities that Rangers did in that first half and don't score, you're always leaving yourself open to what happened after the break.
Yeah, the forward line. I mean, we're talking about the defence here, but Mike Beale talks about both boxes and Rangers lacking in both. A couple of comments coming in aimed at you, Josh. I'll try and get your take on them. This one here. What did you make of Beale's in-game management? His subs were awful and not enough. Of course, brought Rabbi Matondo on for Nico Raskin. We found out later on. At first glance, I thought it was an interesting substitution, but we learned that Nico had to pass a fitness test to take part in that game, and he didn't want to risk him any further with, of course, that Scottish Cup semi-final on the horizon. There's a comment off the back of that by David McCorkadale, who says, if Raskin has an ankle injury, why play him? And the Scott Arfield one was an interesting one. It seemed to be waiting for an age to come on, Josh. When he did eventually come on, the game was dying a death, and there was only a few minutes injury time remaining. So, what did you make of the in-game management?
I mean, Raskin, the ankle injury, he passed the fitness test, so you've got to presume that he was fit enough to play. I actually thought that Raskin was okay in the middle. Obviously, he misses that chance, but I thought he won the ball back quite a lot. Without him, obviously, you're playing Lundstrom and Kamara in there, and you can guarantee that had Lundstrom and Kamara played, Rangers lost, and Beale said, Raskin could have played, but we didn't want to risk him. But he passed the fitness test, and people would say, well, why didn't you play him? So I think that's just based on results that the reaction to that is what it is going to be. Arfield was a strange one because you thought kind of 60, 70 minutes, if just to spook Aberdeen a little bit because of the last time he'd come onto the pitch. I thought the Matondo substitution worked all right. He had that chance where he ran off the back of his man. He had another shot. He looked quite sharp, but I think he looks more comfortable playing off the left side. I don't think there's much denying that, Derek. But when Rangers went behind, I don't think they looked like they were going to come back into the game. And Beale spoke about if you listen to his post-match interviews, whether it be his press conference or with the BBC or Sky, the point he kept coming back to was that Aberdeen, when they imposed their style, when they had their period of ascendancy, they scored. And I just think there's so many parallels with the Old Firm game. In that game, when Rangers had their period of ascendancy, when they were the ones on top, they didn't score. And when Celtic were the ones on top, they did score. And I think yesterday, Rangers were able to impose their style in the first half to a point. They didn't have probably as much control as they'd have wanted. Certainly watching the game back, I thought it was quite chaotic. Watching it first time, and that kind of rung true watching it back as well. But they weren't able to capitalise on that. And yesterday, Morelos has that chance that's cleared off the line, and it's hard to say he should have done much better with that. I think he did well to kind of swivel and find a shot. I think Sakala away from home his numbers have been really impressive for Rangers, but again, it's not learning anything new that he's obviously can be quite sporadic. And yesterday, not only with his one-on-one chance, because that can happen, a keeper can save a one-on-one, and he was quite quick off his line. But other moments where he should perhaps slide the ball into Morelos, I just think
the one-on-one he has to score. I mean, if those chances are presented to Celtic's forwards, they score the vast majority of them. That's the difference at the moment. Rangers don't have that cutting edge in the final third. Now, Malik Tillman's come in for some criticism. Joshua criticised heavily. Now, on reflection, watching it back, he does set up a number of chances. It's not his fault that Borna Barisic fails to hit the target, but hits at the side of the post. Sakala blazes one over. Paul Muir says Tillman set up 3 chances that were blown. Is a criticism of Tillman fair, do you reckon?
The thing is, obviously, criticism is always going to happen when you lose a game, and that's what I think players like Tillman will learn. He did give the ball away. There was a couple of times he gave the ball away at the edge of the opposition area, which were a bit slack. But Paul's right. He also sets up. He sets up. There's one moment, I think it's Sakala's chance, where Sakala should slide the ball into Morelos, and Gonna have a whole kind of breakdown of this on the website later, but he has that moment. He obviously has the pass into Sakala as well, and I can't remember the third chance off the top of my head. And obviously you're then dependent on the player finishing it to get the praise for that. Sorry, I can't find my words. But that's why it's difficult to I guess analyze that game, because if Sakala is just a little bit more composed, then the conversation is, well, Tillman's done brilliantly there in midfield, and to find that pass, which was a really good pass. So there's always going to I think be an element of outcome bias, but also it doesn't exist within a vacuum, and it does exist within a season where, regardless of individual performances, the collective overall has been beaten too many times. And until, as we've kind of continually come back to, Derek, I think until there's either a summer or a big win, and next weekend just becomes even bigger off the back of yesterday, that will continue, because there needs to be some sort of breakaway from, I think, past failure for people to look ahead with confidence and say, well, I can put my eggs in this basket and I'm confident in this team. Because although Rangers had won, I think, 8 games away from home going into the Old Firm recently, yesterday was a return to, as Beale said, a feeling that it wasn't nice. So I think that's where these games will exist until either the summer or next weekend, which just becomes even more of a must-win on the back of yesterday.
Yeah, and it's quite understandable. A lot of supporters don't have much hope going into that game next week. Joe Gallagher says, let's face it, we have absolutely no chance of winning on Sunday. As soon as this season's over, the better. The players are on holiday already. The fight and the heart in that Rangers side is something that's been questioned as well. Denzel says, I started supporting Rangers in the early 70s when I was a kid. The difference now is a lack of fight, heart and pride in a jersey. That's a real problem. It's an interesting one. You're looking at the team that played on Sunday, Joshua, and the options that Michael Beale has at his disposal in terms of possibly freshening up, changing things for Celtic. He doesn't have too many options now. I've seen up front, Alfredo Morelos was poor again. He did well, good technique just at the beginning of the game, and his shot was blocked off the line by Clarkson. That aside, he was virtually anonymous. However, Antonio Cholak, we don't know what the situation is with him. I don't necessarily think that he is the answer at this moment in time. I've seen Zach Lovelace was on the bench. He was an unused sub at Pataudry. It's an area of concern, isn't it, who Rangers play up front? They don't really have anyone else at the moment to lead the line, unless I know we discussed about Malik Tillman being perhaps a false 9 prior to the game at Parkhead. Is it time to try and think radical outside the box, perhaps, or will Morelos lead the line on Sunday?
Just to go back, Alan's there. Notice his comment saying it was the Matondo chance that maybe Tillman set up, but the Barisic one as well. That was the ones we forgot. So, I think that's important in mitigation, especially as the game grows on. And I think Aberdeen made almost 300 pressures yesterday. So they were aggressive and they gambled on committing a lot of men forwards. And I think the second half, the game suited them so much more. The number of tactical fouls is frustrating to watch because it slows the game down so much. But that's what's going to happen when a team's ahead. And they're obviously, I think it's 7 or 8 wins in a row that they have now. So they're kind of full of confidence going into the game. Beale said after that it's a totally different game next weekend's match at Hampden. I guess style-wise it is. He'll see that it's going to be much more...
For a start, they're playing a team that are much better than Aberdeen.
Yeah, but I guess he'd look back to the last Old Firm and say, well, it's going to be more of a footballing battle between the two teams and less of the kind of what we saw in the second half yesterday. But I agree with you. And the thing is, Derek, until obviously there's evidence to the opposite side, and it was the same with the Scottish Cup semi-final last season. The confidence, if I remember right, was quite similar going into that one. Until there's opposite to suggest otherwise, people will not have tons of confidence because they go in having not won an Old Firm in since almost this time last year, which that just can't happen at Rangers, and that's a difficult position that Beale's in because he's come in mid-season, and again, to go back to the sporting director point, that's why you need continuity between managers, and you need someone to do a good job between managers, because otherwise you approach a situation like this where it is just about getting to the summer, and you do just need to refresh or rebuild so many areas of the team because of where it finds itself, when it should have been in a stronger position. If you look at the end to last season with the European run in the season before, obviously, with the title win. Do you do something radical? I doubt that Beale will. I mean, you've said it there, Cholak, he's not really favoured him in big games. And I'd be very surprised if he comes in for that game. Beale said there might be one or two differences, and you presume he's talking about Goldson and Kent, both of whom you'd imagine would come back into the team, especially Kent after yesterday. Although he was really poor in that last Old Firm, we know he's a favourite of Beale. And Sakala was erratic yesterday, and although that has worked in Rangers' favour at points, and he's been a really dangerous player away from home, you think of that Hibs game recently, even Motherwell, where he had a really poor first half and scores 2 minutes into the second half and then sets another goal up. But the difficulty the Rangers have had is that they've not had players who can do that consistently, or enough players who can do that consistently over the course of a season. So that when someone like Sakala has that day yesterday where nothing comes off from really, there's no one to kind of step up and take his place.
No. Let's get a few interesting comments that are coming in. Just on my point about Morelos, and this is something I mentioned yesterday to Johnny. Derek, Beale has told everyone that Alfie and Allen won't be here next season. They've said nothing. Why should they try for Beale when he's written them off? We know that conversations have been had behind the scenes with players. There's a number of them out of contract. It looks to me, Josh, I mean, if you serve your notice at a company, it's fair to say you won't be busting a gut for your employer. You're counting down the days until you leave, aren't you? So I can totally understand why the effort levels may not be as what the supporters want them to be. With regards to Morelos, I think it's clear that he's going to be heading to another challenge in the summer. Likewise, a number of players. But that's my issue. And with, of course, 5 matches of the league season remaining after Sunday, for me, it's now time for players that aren't going to be here next year. I would either play the youngsters, whether they're ready or not, or players that are going to be contracted next year. There is no point for me playing players that are going to be leaving.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think that it's fair to claim that someone like Alan McGregor isn't putting their full effort in.
No, but not necessarily McGregor, but can understand why a lot of people are saying why Rangers get beat yesterday and the effort levels aren't there. I don't think McGregor was at fault for losing the game necessarily, but I think Morelos, he's won like a number of players that haven't been at the races this season, and if their minds are set elsewhere, then I think the last 5 games of the season presents an opportunity that Michael Beale wouldn't necessarily have to play players that will be here next year, and he can plan a Rangers team around. That's my point. I
think to the Morelos point, for example, I think firstly, I don't think yesterday was decided by. I think Rangers have done well in these away games to not let it kind of descend into a battle, which is something that I think always happened under Gerrard, and I think that suits the opposition more than it does Rangers. And I think what Rangers have tended to do well under Beale in these games away from home, Hibs, Hearts, good examples of this, is instead of reacting to that, keeping the number of attackers they would play with at home and getting the space and exploiting that. And as we've already discussed, for a multitude of reasons, they weren't able to do that yesterday. And I think that's why the game was lost in the second half. I thought Aberdeen were far more in control than they were in the first half. The difficulty is who plays in front of Morelos. I mean, no one's seriously suggesting you're going to place Zach Lovelace, who's 17.
I would after Sunday.
You'd play Lovelace. You'd play Lovelace at Hampden.
No, I would after Sunday.
Oh, after Sunday.
If he's good enough, if he's good enough for Millwall's first team, he's good enough to play dead rubbers in the Scottish Premiership for me.
Yeah, but he's also played 20 minutes of football so far. I mean, after the semi-final, you could, if Rangers were to not win that, then there is quite literally nothing to play for. And then maybe you do. There is a lot more rotation. Up to this point, I think Beale's been managing the season and trying to find that balance between as everyone knows, it's no secret that a number of players aren't going to be here next season. I think Morelos is the most obvious of that. I don't think he was great outside of that chance yesterday where he should score. But the difficulty is, who else do you play in place of him at Hampden? I don't know, because Čolak, would you trust Čolak in a game of that magnitude?
No, this is where I'm saying Tillman is that sort of false nine that was mooted prior to the Parkhead game. Is that the sort of rabbit out the hat that you would perhaps look to adopt? He's a player, and I know there's been a lot of question marks whether Rangers should in fact play him next week, because he hasn't really turned up in these Celtic games, but perhaps a change in position might work wonders. Rangers have got an Alfredo Morelos that is not fit and firing at this moment in time, are they? There is legitimate concern that Rangers are going into this semi-final toothless in attack, and they're going to be wasteful with any opportunities that arise that come their way. And at the back, it is shaky, and you can't. There is concerns that they won't lose cheap goals. So I don't know what the answer is. That's why Michael Beale is paid the big bucks to come up with a solution. But there's problems all over the park for me, Joshua.
Undeniably, because again, this is where this is why Beale has said so often he's looked to the summer, and he said before the last Old Firm game, he spoke about 9 games being in the way of what he wants to do, which is get the control of the recruitment, as we've heard a lot about in the last couple of weeks, and get pre-season, not only to work with a new team and I guess really embed his ideas, but also have a break from this season, this season, which still includes that Champions League campaign, which feels so long ago, but there's just been, I think so much disappointment within this season. But the difficulty is obviously those 9 games mean a lot, and especially this semi-final, as we will know, but especially this semi-final is just so significant because the contrast to last season with Gio, when he needed that result to show that he could win an Old Firm, and to show that the project that he was building to get belief behind it. And I think regardless of the good work done outside of that, Derek, everyone knows that you need to win Old Firm games. And regardless of the circumstance you come into, you're going to be judged harshly, and that's just the reality of, I think, football in Glasgow. So, there's definitely a lot of questions going into next week's game. Equally, you look at the last one, and I know it's still decided by the boxes, and that's what we're talking about yesterday. But Rangers, I think, will have felt with the goal that they had chopped off in that game, for example, that they should have perhaps had a different result. There'll need to be obviously a reset within the team this week to try and look ahead to that and win that game, because you can't obviously you can't play down how big that is, but it will be difficult for people to look at that after yesterday and go into it with much confidence naturally, because you've just been beaten.
Yeah, let's get to a few more comments that come in. First of all, shout out for Aldo's mum. He says, can I get a wee shout out for my mother's birthday today, Derek? It's her birthday. So, yeah, no problem at all, Aldo. Hopefully she has a cracking day. And Jim McCarroll, good friend of the show, says, up front for me next Sunday would be Kent, Sakala and Matondo. He's now off out to enjoy the Portuguese sunshine, the wife insists. Yeah, she must have obeyed Jim. Go out and enjoy that. Bit jealous here. Back in the UK. Right, let's get to a few more before we wrap up for today. Joe Gallagher says, Derek, ask Joshua what he thinks on what Johnny said about a rebuild. He would like to hear your view, Joshua. I think, I know that there's been a difference in wording when Stevie Clifford asked him about this. I think after the League Cup final, it says it was it more of a revamp than a rebuild, or words to that effect. It's a rebuild, whatever way you call it. Rangers need an overhaul of that squad in the summer.
Yeah, and you look at the game yesterday, Derek, and it's similar when we're looking back at the Old Firm game. Take the Old Firm game first. I don't know what much more Beale can do in that game. If you compare it to Rangers' previous trips to Parkhead, I think they really negated Celtic in attack. They have the opportunities, they don't finish them, and Celtic do. Outside of the reason that we're speaking about a number 9 and saying that what do you do there? Is because the options at the moment are not great. You're right, Morelos is nowhere near the player that he has been in a Rangers shirt. And similarly, yesterday when Beale watches that game back, I'm sure there'll be a lot of frustration in different ways, but I'm sure he'll also think, well, he needs his finishers to put the goal to put the ball in the goal. And outside of that, if they're not able to do that, if they're not able to finish those number of chances in the first half, then it becomes very difficult. Yes, you can maybe criticise in-game management, and I didn't know that the Arfield was stripped. I thought I seen him get stripped around 80 minutes, but it might have been earlier than that. But outside of that, I think that game is definitely lost by Rangers' lack of clinical edge in the first half, and especially that second goal. Because if it's just 1-0 going into the last 20 minutes, we've seen those games turn before, but when you can see the second soft goal like that, especially at the back post, it becomes very, very difficult. How many players, maybe the better question is, how many players do Rangers have in their current starting 11 that you want to build around? I think you've got Tavernier and Goldson, definitely. Raskin and Cantwell, Tillman for me, that's 5. Outside of that, is there anyone I've missed?
I'm not sure. Just when you say Tillman, I've seen a lot of chatter on social media and in the comments this morning as well. A lot of supporters feeling that the reported £5 million is too much for Tillman, Joshua. I'm still on the side of the fence where I would pay the money. I'm looking at the bigger picture side of things. Malik Tillman's in his first full season as a professional. He will surely improve as the years go on. I think the big question perhaps may be, will Malik Tillman fancy a permanent transfer to Rangers? Does he fancy Scottish football, or may he fancy a challenge in another league in another country? That is the one concern I would have. But I'm reading a lot more supporters just feeling that as a big outlay for one player. Do Rangers really need to spend that much on one specific player when there's different areas of the pitch that need upgrading?
I mean, yeah, I'd 100% buy him. I feel like obviously it's not a great day after a defeat to go on a claim for a buying spree, but to go back to what we're talking about, the number of chances Tillman creates in that first half yesterday, Derek, first professional season. I think the difficulty is with players like Tillman, even Cantwell and Raskin, to a degree, probably need more players around them. You know, but when Beale speaks about 4 or 5 players, and I'm sure it will be more on that dependent on who goes out. I think you're speaking about 4 or 5 players who are going to come into the starting 11. You know, you're speaking about a new starting goalkeeper. You're speaking about a new number 9. You're speaking about a new player to play alongside Nico Raskin. Ridvan presumably comes in to be the first choice left back, and it's the hangover of the money paid for him from last season. Another one in there as well. You are talking about a completely different looking starting 11 to the one that Beale would have played on his first game against Hibs, if you take into account the 4 or 5 players that we've already discussed. So I don't know what you want to call it. I think that is a rebuild because it's the core of the squad. I think the bigger question is how many players outside of those out of contract are moved on, and I guess we'll just have to wait until the summer to see. But there will be, I don't think there's any doubt, there will be a new core of the squad, because Beale will know as well. He'll look at that game yesterday, I'm sure, privately behind the scenes and be really frustrated at the inability to win both boxes, and he'll see that as he knows that for what I think the good work he's done so far. And again, it's difficult to judge until the summer. And yes, he needs to win an Old Firm game, all the caveats. But he'll look at that and know that for him to be a success at Rangers, he needs, I think, more difference makers in that squad, more people that are able to win in games, either in the way that McGregor did in the 55 season, when how many saves did he make that you thought that's changed the game there, or at the other end, when you have the goals that are going to be able to turn games and the difference makers, the players that are able to really grab that game by and turn it. And he'll know that that's dependent on him, as he's been speaking about a lot, going out and getting players in the window that can help him kind of realise that vision, because it needs to happen. I think there just also becomes a point with certain players, Derek, where when failings have happened time and time again, regardless of the context, there's just going to be frustration because people have seen these players be beaten too many times.
Yeah, a few comments coming in, and rightly pointing out, Dave says, you forgot Lawrence, Derek. He'll hopefully be a big player for us next season. Yeah, totally did. It's been an absolute travesty we've not been able to see him since the end of August, and let's hope that he's over those injury issues when he comes back. But it will be the tail end of pre-season, so he will be playing catch-up as we enter into the next campaign, which is unfortunate, but we wish Tom all the very best in his recovery as a top player when he's on his game. As you know, folks, you can donate to the channel, which is greatly appreciated. And we've had some cracking donations come in just whilst we've been on the show. Holt says, keep up the great work, lads. Love the coverage. Keep up the data-heavy pieces, JB says. Nice some words there for you, Joshua. Thanks.
Long one coming today, because I think there's lots to look into from yesterday's game. We should also say, Derek, I think that you see other players getting mentioned there, like Lowry, of course, who will be around next season, but and hopefully play a lot more minutes. But I thought Suter yesterday actually had a relatively good game. Obviously, It's difficult to praise the defender when they lose, but I think if he can get over his injury issues, which so far he has since he's come back into the squad, then he will be a player who plays a lot of minutes next season. And Ben Davies is someone that I have spoke about a lot. I think since he came into the club, I don't think he can deny that he's had a shaky few weeks. Equally, I think that when a player's under the microscope, there's a tendency to look at every single thing they do. But I think there is a decision to be made at centre-back next week, because Suter has played well since he came back in. Again, we're saying that, but they've conceded 7 goals. But I think yesterday you can see what he's going to bring on the ball and off it. Beale obviously has that big decision to make ahead of next week.
He's got that physicality as well. He wins his fair share of aerial balls. So, I've been quite happy with Suter of late. James Strachan with a super chat donation as well. Thank you very much, James. That's very kind of you. He says, Tillman is a player we need. Is it his fault our strikers can't score a goal without a huge amount of chances? Yeah, absolutely. It was a point raised that if Barisic scores, if Sakala scores, then we're talking about Malik Tillman with a couple of assists, aren't we? But football is a funny old game, as they say, and he's one of a number of players that have come into the firing line, of course, after a disappointing result yesterday up at Tawdry. Lots of comments as well, asking when the fixtures will be announced, the post-split fixtures. We'll watch this space with regards to that, folks. I'm sure they will be announced at some point. Even I'm not entirely sure if it may be today. We're obviously looking at when that Old Firm game might take place as well. There has been some mummerings that could be the midweek. I'm not entirely sure when that will be scheduled in, but of course there is one last remaining Premiership Old Firm clash to take place, which will be at Ibrox. So as soon as we hear, folks, we'll let you know on the website and on our social media channels as well. So I'd imagine it probably will be at some point today, you'd imagine. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for that, folks. Right, a bumper show today. I think that'll do us there, Joshua. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you to everyone for interacting with the show. It is very much appreciated. We'll be back again tomorrow as we begin we have begun looking ahead to that game on Sunday, and we'll be back to talk all things Rangers tomorrow. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Bye for now.